Now an event with former military interrogator Matthew Alexander. He was part of the team that helped locate and kill Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the former leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq. The New America Foundation and National Interest magazine host this hour-and-a-half event.
Thank you for coming to the New America Foundation. I'm Peter Bergen, a senior fellow here. Got a very interesting program for today. We're going to first start with Justine Rosenthal, the editor of the National Interest, who will talk a little bit about why she commissioned this story. And then Matthew Alexander will proceed and basically tell you about the major findings of his story. Matthew Alexander is a pseudonym. He's a former senior military interrogator in Iraq who was instrumental in the capture of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the al-Qaeda commander in Iraq, and has written a book on that, How to Break a Terrorist, I believe. And Matthew's email is howtobreakaterrorist@gmail.com if you want to get in touch with him. This is the cover story in the National Interest, a very good issue of the National Interest, not only with Matthew Alexander's story, but a great discussion of the various accounts of the Great Recession that we've just had by Liaquat Ahmed, and also a great debate between John Nagel of CNAS and Paul Pillar about Afghanistan. So with that, Justine, do you want to go ahead? Do you want to stand here, or you can do it from here?
I'll do it from here.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Peter, for having both of us. This is one of those times where I was lucky enough to hit on a terrific story, and author who was a pleasure to work with, and a topic that just felt so ripe, because this detainee issue just is not going away, unfortunately. And we have someone with us who you have performed you have supervised over 1,000 interrogations, done 300 yourself, and was also wise enough to go out looking for better ways to do interrogations. And that was really how this story came to be. It is a story of how the Indonesians, country not necessarily known for their, what should we say, moderate interrogation techniques, learned a new way of doing things, actually through funding from the U.S. government. And when Matthew came to me about this story, there was no resisting it. And it was clearly also the cover. And I have heard from Matthew that people are saying that they've really learned a lot about how we might be able to do interrogations better and actually gain more information, and most importantly, turn them away from radicalization over the long term. And I think with that, you will do your subject matter far better justice than I will. Thank you.
Stand up. Thank you for that. Let me start off by just saying thank you for everybody for coming, and for Peter for putting this together, and to Steve Cole, who's not here, but to the New American Foundation for hosting me, and to the organization which I am a fellow for right now, the Open Society Institute, which has given me the time and resources to actually go out and do the research, and to Justine and the National Interest for printing my story. Euripides, the great Greek playwright, wrote, "The force of words can do whatever is done by conquering swords." I believe firmly that we as Americans are more than capable of outwitting our opponents, terrorists, in the interrogation booth without using enhanced interrogation techniques. I have to expand a little bit on my background before I begin, because there's an important piece of the puzzle here, which is that I was a criminal investigator for the Air Force before I was an interrogator, lent to the Army. And so I was schooled in law enforcement techniques. And I grew up in those techniques in my professional career as an agent for the Air Force. And I had a mentor who was very good at teaching me how to use non-coercive techniques in law enforcement setting. And so when I went to the Army, I had a very unique background, having been a law enforcement officer and everybody else that was in my group from the Air Force, and then learning to interrogate the Army way. And I'm by far not the most experienced interrogator. I have done about 300, a little over 300 interrogations. I've supervised over 1,000. But there's people in the U.S. Army who have done 5,000 interrogations. What I bring is kind of a different background, a different set of eyes on this puzzle of how can we improve interrogators and interrogation techniques. Come with me for a moment to Iraq, 2006. It's a summer. It's the height of the violence. This is a few months after the Golden Dome mosque bombing. And Iraq is engulfed in flames. The body count every day is in the hundreds. And for anybody who was there, it certainly feels like a civil war is erupting around us. I'm in northern Iraq, and I'm a member of a Special Forces raid team. Myself and my interrogation partner, Mike, our job is to interrogate people at the point of capture, whether that be a house, a car, on the street, and get information in a matter of minutes. Where before this, I was interrogating in a prison, I had hours, days, weeks to get information. Now I have 10 or 15 minutes. Every single day, we go out on a mission to raid a house. A couple weeks after arriving, a couple dozen missions under my belt, we get a lead on a house of an al-Qaeda weapons dealer. This is the guy who provides all of weapons for al-Qaeda in northern Iraq. We throw on our gear, we race out the gate in our strikers. We come to the house, soldiers disembark, blow the front door off, race into the house, clear the rooms, and they capture an Iraqi sleeping in bed next to his wife in his pajamas. They call the interrogators. We come up to the room. I walk inside and I find Akram, a bookish, accountant-looking Iraqi man in his mid-40s, standing against his dresser with his arms flex-cuffed behind his back in his pajamas. And I approach Akram, and I go through the standard list of questions. How are you doing? I'm fine. What's your job? I work at a bank. Who lives in this house? Me and my family. His wife and young son and daughter are in a separate room being interviewed by my interrogation partner, Mike. Has anybody visited his house? No. Soldier behind me is going through the room at the same time. He's looking through drawers, under the bed, through the hamper, dirty clothes. No weapons. He walks by me. He says it's clean. Carries on. A lieutenant comes in from outside who's in charge of the mission, approaches me and said there's no weapons in the house. About that time, I look around the room and I see something on a wall. It's a wooden cross. I look the other way, and in the hallway, I see an oil painting of the face of Jesus. I look at Akram and I say, "Are you Christian?" He says, "Yes, I'm a Syrian." I look to my interpreter, Biggie, an Iraqi from the south of Iraq. He's a Shia, and he nods at me. Iraqis know these things intuitively. He didn't need to see the cross on the wall. I instantly realize we're in the wrong house. In Iraq, believe it or not, there's no numbers on the houses. It happens quite often. And so I say to Akram, "I'm sorry. It appears we're in the wrong house." It's a little bit embarrassing. And I know it's quite scary to have your house raided at night, to be separated from your women, your wife and your children. And he says, "Is my family okay?" And I said, "Yes, you can be assured that we're not going to harm them. We're not going to harm you. I'll pay you for the door that we blew off and the damage to your house. But the biggest thing I can offer you is an apology." I said, "But the problem is I'm looking for someone." He said, "I know. But you have to understand, I have a family, and I have to protect them. I don't want to be involved." I said, "I understand that, but how long can you afford to not be involved? Every day al-Qaeda is clearing neighborhoods of Assyrians, of Christians, and of Shias. How long until you'll be a target of the next attack? So I'm asking you to work with me, an American, to try and make Iraq safe." He nods at me, he looks at the ground, he exhales, and he says, "Well, it's too late. You've already come in my house, so everybody's already going to assume that I am working with you." And he thinks about it for a second, and he says to me, 3 doors down the street on the left." We race out of the house, down the street. Within 2 minutes, a soldier kicks down the door to the house down the street, runs into the room, and captures the weapons dealer asleep on his living room floor. Within minutes, we've pulled out every type of weapon and ammunition and armament that al-Qaeda is using in Iraq, and we've just discovered the super Walmart of al-Qaeda weaponry.